Greetings, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. Tonight we have two fantastic guests for you that'll be joining us. First, Kathleen Martin, who is a prominent UFO abduction researcher, author, and lecturer with over 23 years' experience in the field. She was MUFON's Director of Abduction Research, and she's also been the Director of Field Investigator Training. And then also tonight we have Miss Denise Stoner. And Denise is with the Florida MUFON. She is the Assistant Director of Abduction Studies. She's a MUFON field investigator and a STAR team member. She heads a Florida research group that is part of UFO Research of North America, which was established back in 2009. So Kathleen and Denise have joined forces and have a new book coming out this month that we're going to be talking about, among other things. So we've got just a ton to talk about, so we're going to get right to it. Kathleen, Denise, are you out there?
Yes, we are. Yes, I'd like to say right away that that group that I'm working out of Florida is under the Pennsylvania group headed by Butch Witkowski.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry for that error. We'll get that.
That's okay.
We'll get that correct.
Okay, good.
So you both just have a ton of experience. Obviously, we're not going to have time to go through everything that you've done over the past many, many years. So we're going to try to hit the hot topics if we can. Kathleen, why don't you kick things off and tell us about this new book you have coming out?
I certainly would love to do that. The name of the book is The Alien Abduction Files, the most startling cases of human alien contact ever. And this is a book that contains case after case of UFO abduction experiences. It begins with Denise Stoner's own personal two missing time experiences, one in Colorado and one in Florida, with her family, with loads of evidence. Denise goes on to tell her personal story about a lifetime of abductions. The second section of the book is about the abduction experiences of a woman from New Hampshire, prominent in her community, married with two children, who is a multi-generational abduction experiencer, also with loads of evidence. And the third section of the book tells the stories of several additional experiencers, all who have some very unique commonalities among them that one does not find among the general population.
So now, why did you decide to come together on this book? Is it because Denise had this experience, or did you guys share information in other ways to do this book?
Well, I was already working on the book. I had written several chapters about Jenny Henderson's abduction experiences. And as shortly after I moved to Florida, I got together with Denise. We had communicated via email before that, but I got in touch with her about 3.5 years ago now when I moved to Florida. We met. I went to a couple of her meetings, and she'll tell you about those in a little while. But she was a prominent UFO investigator and abduction investigator in the state of Florida. I realized not long after I met her and saw her work, went to her meetings, that she was pretty outstanding in her field. And later, I discovered that she was an experiencer herself. And this is where a lot of her knowledge came from. Um, I'm a hypnotherapist. She had hypnosis when she was living in Colorado, and she didn't have the audio tapes of her hypnosis
Mm-hmm.
or the transcripts of what she stated. She had forgotten some of that and wanted to refresh her memory about the experiences that she had had. And so I volunteered to assist her in refreshing her memory. And that is how our relationship began. And I found that there was so much evidence in this case as I investigated it personally. I investigated it in Colorado and also in um, Florida by visiting, leaving no stone unturned. And the case was so compelling, I asked her if she'd like to join me in writing this book. She had told me that she had contributed some written material to another book and had written some things. So, and we got along together very well. I thought we could work well together.
Excellent. Excellent. So, where should we go first? Should we let Denise tell us a little bit about her experiences? Or where would you ladies like to go on this?
I think we could do that because Kathleen can uh, break in when she wants to, and we'll just take turns.
Okay, that sounds
Sounds good to
great.
me.
Okay. Um, when I had discussed with Kathleen some of my experiences, and I had worked with a doctor who has since passed away in Colorado, we left so many things open as far as what I wanted to know. And so Kathleen and I talked, and she offered, and I didn't hesitate. I just had felt comfortable with her. I had invited her to my home for lunch. We spent at least a couple of hours, the majority of an afternoon, talking. And so I thought, okay, this is something I would really like to do, and I would like to investigate a little further. So I went to her home and we began the process. And the way we began that was, first of all, what were all my conscious memories? She wanted to get all of that documented just to find where the spaces were. What had I forgotten, or what did I not know? And all of this took place, the majority of what is in the book is what took place in Colorado, where my husband and I had packed a car at home in Arvada for a 3-day weekend at a campground in Buena Vista, Colorado, about 3.5 hours on the road. And we left home at 5 p.m. We were talking together. My daughter and little dog were sound asleep. And the traffic at first was heavy. We were headed for an area called Kenosha Pass. And by the time we reached there was no traffic at all, virtually. You could look down on South Park Valley, which was created by a huge glacier many years ago, flat, wide open, and you could see it in a little town called Jefferson right at the base of Kenosha Pass, which kind of sat in the shadows at the base of the pass, but it was still sunny. It was summertime. It was August 13th of 1982. And so we stopped at the top of Kenosha Pass for no more than 10 minutes to stretch our legs. We'd been on the road for a while. We were supposed to meet my parents on the other side of the valley and over another mountain pass called Trout Creek. And my mom was going to be cooking dinner. They had come in from Colorado Springs.
Mm.
Well, we headed across the valley and had dipped down, crossed through Jefferson at the base of Kenosha Pass, about 4 miles outside the town of Jefferson. And I had been watching two lights outside in the valley. It's like a flat desert floor, high desert. And they kept coming closer and closer, and they were going to meet us at right angles to the car. And I couldn't see anything else but the lights. Thought maybe it was some sort of anomaly, but I wasn't concerned until we reached an area outside of Jefferson that I realized we were going to meet them exactly against the road, and became very, very concerned as to what they might be. And it was still daylight. And I looked at my husband and realized that he was staring straight ahead, didn't appear to have control of the car, and wasn't paying any attention to what I was saying.
Wow.
And those lights went over the top of the car. I was trying to talk to him. I was becoming concerned. And we had big snow barriers made out of wood on either side of the road that would stop snow blowing in the winter, or huge tumbleweeds that would break loose once they dried, and it would prevent accidents from happening in the dark. It was still light out. And the tires on the left-hand side, or the driver's side of the car, began to move and scrape in the road. The car was moving sideways.
Oh,
And we were being taken off the road, and I thought we were going to get in an accident, and at the same time couldn't quite figure out and register in my head what was going on. And then I thought, okay, we're going to hit the snow barriers. And just as I thought that, the car lifted up in the air and moved over the top of the barriers.
oh my.
And I was watching the lights, but I couldn't see what was above them. My daughter was still asleep. She didn't wake up. She was sound asleep. So was our dog. My husband was still holding on to the wheel and just looking straight ahead. He wasn't reacting. And so we moved far out into the desert. And then I felt the car slowing down. I knew we were going to stop. And I knew we were going to settle down on the desert floor. And the next thing I knew, it was pitch dark, and we were on the far pass on the other side of the high desert.
Wow.
And
And your husband, this whole time, the car is moving sideways all the way out into the desert, right?
Yes, yes,
And the whole time he's just transfixed, looking ahead of, with no emotion, just kind of sitting there, huh?
yes, nothing.
Oh, jeez.
Eyes wide open. And so at one point, I slouched down in my seat, but that was stupid, because what was that going to do? Where am I going to go from there? Um, so, to my astonishment, I felt great fear, panic, disorientation, you name it, I felt it. Looked to my husband for something, some kind of response,
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of an answer, because he was alert now, but now he's frightened and he's disoriented. And he feels, let's pull over, let's see if we can gather our wits. So that's what we did. And we tried to figure out, all right, exactly where are we? Well, we had had a little bit of trouble with our gas mileage on this particular car, even though it was fairly new. So he had set the trip meter. And approximately 3.5 hours and 4 miles south of Jefferson, the trip meter read 74 miles. When we woke up on the pass on the other side, it read 74 miles. When we arrived at our campsite, the trip meter read 97 miles, which proved to us it was working. But it was 40 miles short of the usual 137-mile trip, and it's also pitch dark.
Now, is this your first experience?
No.
Oh, okay. So you've had other experiences. When this was starting to happen, did you think to yourself, "Here we go again"? When you see these lights?
No, it just
Oh,
didn't
really?
register. It did not. I don't know
Oh,
why. No, it really didn't. I I just was staring at the lights, and for some reason, I didn't think of, oh, well, here we go again, because I was age 2.5 the first time it happened.
ah, I see. I
Denise
see.
had been taken from her home other times. This was the first missing time experience when she and her husband, daughter, and little dog were on vacation in an external environment driving down the highway. So this was different.
Let me ask you something, both of you, because Since I started doing this show 17 months ago, I think now, I've had a chance to talk to several abductees or proposed abductees. What do you look at? And maybe this is more of a Kathleen question, but what do you look at when you're talking to somebody who's trying to convey this story of abduction? Is there anything that you try to focus in on to get the feeling whether they're being honest with you or if they're making things up? Is there anything that you can do during your interview to help with that?
Well, there are many, many things that I look for. First of all, I've had some training in FBI lie detector training in order to determine through a person's body language whether or not they are telling the truth. So that certainly helps. And for the most part, I think that people are telling me what they believe is the truth. But in an abduction investigation, it's important to look for evidence. And it's very difficult to do that if a person has only been abducted from their home. But the really great thing, and what all investigators hope to get, is a case where there is some very good evidence that this has occurred. And for example, what I looked for when I met Denise was, had she ever had a missing time experience when she was in an external environment? Did she have conscious, continuous recall of observing a UFO? Were there other witnesses? Was anyone on the other end waiting, anticipating her arrival at a certain time? And they were. Her mother, her father, and a family friend expected Denise and her family to arrive between 8 and 8:30 that night in order to have dinner with them. They didn't arrive until 11 o'clock. So there was a considerable amount of missing time, and the family members on the other end of the trip were very, very concerned, worried, and walking toward the ranch house in order to use the phone in order to call the safety patrol or the state police to find out if something had happened to the family, such as a car accident or the car being broken down. I was able to interview Denise's mother. I was also able to hypnotize Denise and her husband separately to see if under hypnosis they remembered the same event. So all of these things went into determining whether or not this might have been a real experience. And of course, the more evidence you have, the more convincing the case. And Denise and Ed Stoner had a very convincing case. They're upstanding members of their community. You also have to assess a person's character. You have to assess how productive they have been in their lives, how successful they have been. These were the perfect individuals in the perfect case that an investigator might hope for.
Wow. Denise, you say, this has been going on since age 2.5, I believe you said. When did you go public, or when did you reach out for someone publicly, I guess you would say, for help?
Well, it wasn't until I moved to Colorado and I saw an ad in the paper that a doctor had put in there. He was working on a type of hypnosis that he wanted to be able to use with people to help control pain without medication. And I had a type of chronic pain due to some surgery I had that I thought, okay, I'm volunteering. So he took in test subjects to see how susceptible they were to hypnosis, and if so, what level, and so forth. And he selected me immediately because I am a good hypnotic subject. And we became friends. And during the course of working with his task, we discovered that we were both interested in UFOs and the I was trying to think of a term we could use. The results of having witnessed a UFO or having been an abductee. And so he began to work with me to see what we could discover together. So for 5 years, he taught me his methods of hypnosis. We began to work with abductees, and that's how that started.
Wow, wow. It's amazing how these coincidences seem to happen. You meet certain people that propel your life forward. Uh, one question I've always had, uh, when you watch these regressive hypnotherapy sessions on TV, uh, and the person is lying there, the abductee is sitting there, very calm, and they're talking about the experience they had, et cetera, and they always seem very calm. I've always wondered, do people ever just completely freak out when they go back and these memories come up? I mean, it seems to me like, or does if the state of being hypnotized keep you from doing that? Because I would think if you didn't know what had happened to you and then you find out, oh my God, there's these entities there, you wouldn't be laying on the couch. You would be completely freaking out.
Consider the case of Betty and Barney Hill, my aunt and uncle. They were the first abduction experiencers to stir worldwide attention for their 1961 UFO abduction. When they were in hypnosis sessions with Dr. Benjamin Simon, a renowned psychiatrist, in his Boston office, they were reliving their abduction experience. It was event level in their emotions and in their minds. And they freaked out, you might say. They both experienced extreme trauma, extreme fear. Their emotions were raw. At one point, Dr. Simon had to take control over Barney because he feared that he was going to get up and run and perhaps jump out of the window in his office in order to attempt to escape this UFO that was hovering directly above him as he was observing non-human entities looking back at him. Also, when my Aunt Betty was on a table, an examining table inside the craft, and the examiner plunged a very large needle into her navel, she experienced so much trauma that Dr. Simon had to end the session early. That is the kind of hypnosis session that a psychiatrist might hold with abduction experiencers. But if we're talking about a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist, it's different.
Oh.
And today, often it is done differently than the way Dr. Simon did it. Because today we have learned that we can work with individuals in order to alleviate that fear, that they don't have to relive it.
So they alleviate the fear first, and then they can probe into some more of the more defined activities.
Yes. Whenever I work with anyone, I give them sort of an escape route, a safe place that they can go to retreat whenever they wish to. They don't have to go on, they don't have to experience anything such as Betty and Barney were forced to experience in Dr. Simon's office. When I was working with Denise in the very beginning, she found herself on the craft, and she described to me what she was observing, and suddenly she observed an extraterrestrial creature that caused her to experience a great deal of fear. And immediately I helped to calm her, and I offered her the opportunity to retreat from that experience. And she did. She decided she'd like to end the hypnosis session right then and there. I gave her post-hypnotic suggestions to calm her, to permit her to forget anything that might bother her, and to come back to me whenever she was ready to move on. And it did take several weeks to do that. And in the interim, I gave her support for any anxiety she might be having. To tell you the truth, she didn't experience much after that because of the technique that I used with her. So we do it differently today.
Denise,
Yes.
looking back now, are you glad that you worked with Kathleen and worked on this, I guess, regressive type therapy? Are you glad you did it?
Oh, absolutely.
And are you continuing to do it, I guess, would be the next question.
Yes, we're working together because some of this is continuing, and we're working on further research, which we don't care to delve into right at the moment because it might ruin something that would help others in the future. We're planning some further questions and studies, and those are being built right now. And some other things are happening to me, and so those need work. But we're both working together very well, and I wouldn't consider stopping.
That's great. That's great. Kathleen, if somebody feels that they have been abducted, how important is it for them to, if this is something they want to look into, how important is it for them to contact someone like yourself as soon as possible? If they delay that by weeks or months or even years, is it harder then? I'm assuming it's harder then to go back and try to put these pieces together. What's up with that?
I would advise anyone, if they have had a recent abduction experience, if they have evidence, and if they want to have their case investigated, that they should contact the Mutual UFO Network at MUFON.com and file a report. In the top right-hand corner of their home page is a little icon that says Report UFO. So you just click on that and you fill out your report. An investigator will meet with you immediately. We will look for physiological evidence. We'll look for evidence on your body. If you were driving in a vehicle, we'll look for radiation. We'll look for magnetic effects. We'll look for electromagnetic effects. All of that is very important to collect immediately. That kind of thing can't wait for a couple of years. And if it does wait, then there isn't really much to investigate. It's except for what a person might want to investigate on their own to answer their own questions, because MUFON is an investigative organization. If you have not collected a lot of evidence, if you're having abduction experiences and you feel that you need support, then there are support groups, and they specialize in working with individuals anonymously. People can go to support groups and speak to other people who have had the same kinds of experiences, and that really helps emotionally. I highly recommend that for emotional healing.
Yeah, I've heard from other abductees that that's probably one of their biggest support mechanisms are the groups.
Absolutely.
You know, some
People need to be able to communicate with others who won't judge them, who will listen to what they have to say, and who will give them support and understanding. Hypnosis is not at the top of my list of priorities. The reason for that is if an individual has uh, read a great deal about abduction, if they've been online, if they've gone to chat rooms, um, and they have hypnosis, the chance that they'll confabulate information that didn't really happen to them will increase. And so it will be nearly impossible to determine what was real and what was not real, particularly if it comes to detailed information.
I
Um,
see. I see. Now Denise's story that we heard some about earlier here, uh, in the new book, the Alien Abduction Files. Is there more information in the book about Denise's experience?
Oh, there absolutely is. One-third
Okay.
of the book is devoted to Denise's experiences. The hypnosis transcripts are there, her two missing time experiences, and in her own writing, she wrote about her memories dating back to the time that she was a young child and carrying through her life with her abductions. Now, Denise and I also did a commonality study. It was a research project that involved 50 experiencers and 25 people in sort of like a control group. And we were attempting to identify little known commonalities among experiencers that are not commonalities across the general population. We found 23 of these commonalities, and we compared the experiencers in our book to those who took part in the study. And I can tell you that Denise had every single one of those 23,
Wow.
as did the second individual whose story I wrote about in this book and whose case I investigated over a 14-year period.
Well, tell us when exactly does the book come out, or if it has already come out, and where can people get it?
Well, the book is officially being released on May 20th, but Amazon has the book in stock, and you can purchase it there. Barnes and Noble as well, and you can also buy autographed copies from me at my website, which is Kathleen with a K hyphen Marden MARDEN.com. And Denise, why don't you give your website?
Yes, mine is Denise M as in Margaret Stoner.com.
All right. Well, I'll get those URLs up on the screen. Um, Ladies, we're just about out of time here, but I wanted to ask one last question. I wasn't going to bring it up unless you did first, Kathleen, and that's the fact that you are the niece of Betty and Barney Hill.
That is correct.
And that is just so amazing. Uh, and from reading your bio, I understand that Betty actually called you shortly after the incident happened. Is that correct? You don't have to go into a big dissertation, but is that correct?
Betty called my childhood home to speak to my mother, her sister, and I was seated in the same room when my mother took the call. So I knew about this from day one.
Wow. Well, I would definitely love to have you back on to talk about maybe that
I'd
subject
love to.
someday. Would you do that?
I certainly would.
Oh, that would be excellent. Well, listen, ladies, it's been absolutely an amazing discussion. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know that you guys have just been hitting the shows one right after another. Best of luck on your new book,
Thank you.
The Alien
Thank you,
Abduction
yes.
Files. And Denise, good luck to you on your on all your regression therapy you're doing and whatever else life has in store for you.
Yes, thank you. Well, I run a support group also, and Kathleen attends as much as she can, and we find it very valuable.
Great, great. Well, listen, I wish you both a great rest of the evening, and we will stay in touch.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Open the door, you'll find the secret. To find the answer is to keep it. You'll believe it when you find something screaming across your mind. Green slime.
Saw her work, went to her meetings, that she was pretty outstanding in her field. And later, I discovered that she was an experiencer herself. And this is where a lot of her knowledge came from. Um, I'm a hypnotherapist. She had had hypnosis when she was living in Colorado, and she didn't have the audio tapes of her hypnosis or the transcripts of what she stated. She had forgotten some of that and wanted to refresh her memory about the experiences that she had had. And so I volunteered to assist her in refreshing her memory, and that is how our relationship began. And I found that there was so much evidence in this case as I investigated it personally. I investigated it in Colorado and also in Florida by visiting, leaving no stone unturned.
Greetings, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. Tonight we have two fantastic guests for you that'll be joining us. First, Kathleen Martin, who is a prominent UFO abduction researcher, author, and lecturer with over 23 years' experience in the field. She was MUFON's director of abduction research, and she's also been the director of field investigator training. And then also tonight we have Miss Denise Stoner. And Denise is with the Florida MUFON. She is the Assistant Director of Abduction Studies. She's a MUFON field investigator and a STAR team member. She heads a Florida research group that is part of UFO Research of North America, which was established back in 2009. So Kathleen and Denise have joined forces and have a new book coming out this month that we're going to be talking about, among other things. So we've got just a ton to talk about, so we're going to get right to it. Kathleen, Denise, are you out there?
Yes, we are. Yes, I'd like to say right away that that group that I'm working out of Florida is under the Pennsylvania group headed by Butch Witkowski.
Ah, okay, okay, very good. I'm sorry for that error. We'll get that.
That's okay. You
We'll get
probably
that correct.
okay. Good, good.
um, so you both just have a ton of experience. Obviously, we're not going to have time to go through everything that you've done over the past many, many years. So we're going to try to hit the hot topics if we can. Uh, Kathleen, why don't you kick things off and tell us about this new book?
All who have some very unique commonalities among them that one does not find among the general population.
So now, why did you decide to come together on this book? Is it because Denise had this experience, or did she? Did you guys share information in other ways to do this book?
Well, I was already working on the book. I had written several chapters about Jenny Henderson's abduction experiences. And as shortly after I moved to Florida, I got together with Denise. We had communicated via email before that, but I got in touch with her about 3.5 years ago now when I moved to Florida. We met. I went to a couple of her meetings, and she'll tell you about those in a little while. But she was a prominent UFO investigator and abduction investigator in the state of Florida. I realized not long after I met her, and
Book you have coming out.
I certainly would love to do that. The name of the book is The Alien Abduction Files, the most startling cases of human alien contact ever. And this is a book that contains case after case of UFO abduction experiences. It begins with Denise Stoner's own personal 2 missing time experiences, one in Colorado and one in Florida, with her family, with loads of evidence. Denise goes on to tell her personal story about a lifetime of abductions. The second section of the book is about the abduction experiences of a woman from New Hampshire, prominent in her community, married with 2 children, who is a multi-generational abduction experiencer, also with loads of evidence. And the third section of the book tells the stories of several additional experiences